I didn't think it would happen this quick, but I said it would happen. We are on the brink of XRP going nuclear, and it's all because of the liquidity crisis that I've been talking about. Japan's 2-year yield rises to over 1% for the first time since 2008. That doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that it's a lot. For the longest time, you were able to borrow very cheap Japanese yen and then buy US assets. You basically pocketed all of the difference, so you were basically getting paid to hold the Japanese yen. This was one of the most exploited things about this financial system that shouldn't even be possible, but it's showing exactly why it's unsustainable and why we need a new financial system. And what's about to happen is going to be like putting a crack in the ice and watching everything unfold. Because since the yen is so cheap to borrow against, it has the most amount of debt attached to it. This is going to be a liquidity crisis that just continues to unravel, and it's going to force investors into the reverse carry trade. So what happened in the past was people were able to borrow the Japanese yen at 0%, buy US assets at 4 to 5%. But now since the Japanese yen is strengthening, you have to borrow at 1% and then invest in 4 to 5%, which is not as profitable for investors. So now investors are beginning to retract their original carry trades. This is why it's called the reverse carry trade. So basically what happens is the Japanese yen strengthening creates a massive feedback loop for everybody, because when the Japanese yen strengthens, it makes it less profitable for the carry trade. People start to retract their carry trades into the reverse carry trade. Then the Japanese yen strengthens even more, and then they just start the whole process over and over again. And this is where it gets massive when you add oil into the picture, and you guys are going to see the issue that we have with so many different assets and commodities being contingent and dependent on one another. Like the price of one currency being this price, what effect it causes with oil. This is what we don't need. This is why we need XRP, and why XRP fixes this with cross-border global liquidity. So this is already a long video as it is, but this is kind of the problem with the carry trade and how all of this interconnects. So when the Japanese yen strengthens, there's less demand for dollars, but there's also less demand for oil, because Japan is one of the largest oil importers in the world and pays for oil in USD. What this does is oil becomes cheaper for Japan. Japan also doesn't need to sell as many United States dollar reserves, and Japanese institutions don't need to buy USD to pay for the energy imports. So what happens? Guys, this is so massive. Japan no longer keeps the US dollar flowing into the global system. If you guys have been watching my videos, you see how I talk about the quantum physics and quantum financial system, and there needs to be a financial system that allows energy to flow naturally anywhere, anytime, without borders, without barriers, all of this stuff. This is what XRP is meant to fix, this liquidity issue that we have, and it's happening in real time. And I don't want to go too in depth because this video could end up being very, very long, but the reverse carry trade, the retraction of the carry trade, and the Japanese yen going up in price, basically what that means is that US assets begin to struggle, risk assets begin to struggle, like Bitcoin, all of these other speculative cryptos begin to struggle, utility cryptos begin to rise. And then things that were over leveraged, like what exactly happened in the 2008 housing crisis, like I've been talking about, things that were completely over leveraged and people not being able to pay for all of this stuff begins to crash. So this is like a very big deal, guys. The headline of Japan's yield rising to over 1% is not just a footnote. It is a macro earthquake, because we have not had this headline since before the 2008 housing crisis. Japan having a 2-year yield above 1% for the first time since before the global financial crisis indicates a change in monetary policy and indicates that Japan's yen must strengthen in the midterm because of this policy change that they have implemented. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you, but this is exactly why we need a financial system that has global cross-border liquidity and doesn't have liquidity all interconnected and tied and dependent on one another. And with the yen, the Japanese yen, rising in yield and the carry trade retracting, the reverse carry trade, this is going to put a lot of pressure on leveraged positions in stocks, bonds, and crypto. And anything that is over leveraged is going to get wiped out.